Welcome to the U-Turn Podcast. My friend, this is Ashley Stahl. I'm your host, and you are in the right place if you're ready to create a business, a career, a personal brand, or just a life that you're so proud of. And every single week, we want to support you by bringing you PhDs, subject matter experts, psychology practitioners, business leaders, all here on the show to elevate your success in business and also in life so that you can leave the legacy, you can amplify your authority, and you can really skyrocket the amount of opportunities you're creating for yourself in your career, whether you're corporate or you're a business owner. And if you are new here, again, my name is Ashley Stahl. I'm an international bestselling author of the book U-Turn, Get Unstuck, Discover Your Direction, Design Your Dream Career. And most importantly, I'm the CEO and founder of Wise Whisper Agency. I'm a top 100 TEDx speaker on the internet, and I was so inspired to create Wise Whisper and help clients craft their signature talk. We've helped hundreds of clients craft their talk, and we've also helped so many of them land spots on some of the biggest stages in the world, including the TED and TEDx stage. And so I am here on a mission to help every changemaker I know impact millions. Also, before we get into this episode, shout out to our friend Andy B. Mackin, the artist that has gifted us this sick new music for the podcast. Let's get into this week's episode. All right, U-Turn friends. Today, we're going to talk about something that is so important for all of us. It's one of the core pillars of life that either we're feeling really light about, or if it's not going well, we're feeling super freaking heavy about it, and it's money. And so I thought it would be epic to bring Brian Preston on the show. He's the founder and the host of the Money Guy Show. He's the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Millionaire Mission, which is a 9-step system to level up your finances and build wealth. And he's also the managing partner and co-founder of Abound Wealth Management, an RIA with over $1 billion in assets under management. So obviously, he's got decades of experience in financial planning. He's been around all sorts of people who are dealing with all sorts of feelings about money. And we all know, if you've been listening to the show a while, how much I love a 9-step system, a 5-step system, and anything step system. So without further ado, thank you so much, Brian, for coming on the show.
Oh, Ashley, I'm super excited to be here. And, it's fun. You and I started talking even before we hit the record button. So this ought to be a lot of fun for me and you, as well as for the audience.
Yeah. Us. Okay. So talk to me about your book. I know that, for me personally, you have your book, out May 28th, 2024. So it's been out, a few months. And I imagine that, I don't know, maybe you were just waiting to see how the world met it, or maybe there's something on your heart that drove you to write it. Talk to me a little bit about what brought you to that focus.
Well, truthfully, I've had a bucket list desire to have a book really for the last probably 2 decades. But every time I started to write a book, it would have a false start. I went in so many different directions. Choose your own adventure financial, because everybody is so different with their financial needs. I'd come up with like 3 different versions, but then during the pandemic, I was at home more, and I felt like my wife still needed me to have an outlet to try, probably not drive her crazy. And I was like, maybe this is my time to actually start writing a book. And then when I sat down and for some reason, that moment it all connected, and and I was able to actually finish the drill. And Ashley, you've also written, so this is it's a very scary thing when you write a book, because you spend so much time with it. You actually get to the point that in some ways you're sick of it, but then the moment you launch it, you have this insecurity that takes you back to high school, where you're like, what, especially if you put your own personal stories in your book.
Yeah.
I was so nervous about what people would think. And fortunately, it's blown my mind, blown my expectations. It's fun for me in the fact that I didn't know, when you go into something you've never done before, you don't know how it's supposed to feel. Yeah. So I always pay attention to the people around me, whether it's the publishing agent, whether it's the publishing company, and I try to gauge what I should feel based upon their reactions. And you could honestly see when we got New York Times bestseller, that they were truly surprised too, which made me happy because you often wonder if you're just being handled and told, positive stuff. But when that happened, and then it's continued to pay it forward with, and I would encourage your audience, if you're curious about Millionaire Mission, go to Amazon, just read the reviews. I mean, I'm guilty that I still read them.
Yeah, of
'Cause it
course.
just makes
It's a good
you
feeling.
feel good about yourself and feel
Yeah.
good that that what you've written is actually helping the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody needs it. It's one of the most ubiquitous things, especially in the United States. So I love that you open up talking about your book on your Amazon page. You say taking control of your financial freedom is simpler than you think. In fact, your money should work harder than you do. I think a lot of people, maybe they have like a salaried job and they feel like they're living on a merry-go-round every single month, where once you pay for, I mean, I live in Los Angeles. And
Yeah.
my first job was at an ad agency, and I was paid 30K in like 2009 or 10 or something like that. And by the time taxes were taken out, it was like I can't even get ahead. So I
Right.
know that, obviously for people like that, your reality is you are where you are and you need to pay your bills. But I know everyone wants to get ahead. Everyone wants to feel that sense of momentum. So what are some of your best thoughts on how to not see it that way if you're kind of stuck in feeling like a cog in the wheel?
Well, I mean, you're hitting on why I wrote this book is
Yeah.
because I grew up in a house that had a lot of love, a lot more love than money. And I had a great childhood, but my parents never understood money completely. I mean, I think they had good instincts, but their idea of investing was like CDs. And my dad was laid off when I was in middle school. And then and there's other things I describe in the book with my father dying when I was in my 20s, that I wanted to know, because I remember I graduated with an accounting degree, and I remember thinking, even as I started having a little margin in my life, a little money, I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, so what do you do with your next dollar? And nobody ever tells you this stuff. It's not like, they teach you all these the order of operations with math. We all get taught PEMDAS, but nobody ever tells you what are you supposed to do with your money, even if you have a little bit. And
Mhm.
that's what I immediately started having thoughts to when my journey, and I can still remember my junior year of high school, Mr. Morrow walking in and telling us, and it wasn't, by the way, part of the curriculum. This was more of, I think he had regrets and he had just learned this stat. So he was just sharing it with, one of those offhand comments that a teacher does. And he goes, guys, every one of you guys could be a millionaire if you just start investing $100 a month. And I remember thinking, because I was working the local drive-through at Hardee's, and being like, wait a minute, I could do $100 a month. And that's the thing that I want people. You ask, what can I share? As I want everybody to know that I have written this book so that I don't care where you are, if you're in that $30,000 entry level job, or even if you're now you've been blessed and you're over six figures, you can do this. And I've tried to write this book to hit everybody, no matter where they are in the journey, with kind of the instruction manual on what to do. And I think that, and what I can tell from the reviews, and this is what I was hoping it would do, is just like The Wealthy Barber and The Millionaire Next Door hit me in the mid 90s when I started my journey. This book is kind of helping people take those steps. And then you figure out that it gets a lot easier once you just start rolling
Yeah.
things forward and taking action.
Also, I love the topic of momentum because I feel like that's the real sauce. It's like anybody listening right now, we all know that feeling where things are just moving. We're just in momentum. And it's such a good feeling. And so I imagine there's certain things everybody can do, whether they read the book or not, which I hope you all get a copy of the book. It's everywhere books are sold, Amazon. I'm seeing it. All the reviews, 4.9 stars, which is, I'm an author. That's really hard to do. And so, what are a few things that your everyday human who is making a decent salary, maybe they got a little money left every month, they don't know where to begin. Obviously, I want them to read the book, but with the start of this podcast, where do we get them moving?
I always talk about, and I walk through this in the book too, but the mindset is such an important thing, and the first thing I always talk about, the three ingredients to wealth building. And if you're going to boil down this complicated process, or what is perceived as complicated or hard, how do we make it as simple and easy as possible? And the first thing understanding is the first ingredient is discipline. But you have to, and I know nobody likes it. I mean, we all want to be strong, we all want to be better, but unfortunately, you have to sometimes do hard stuff to get there. So discipline or deferred gratification, living on less than you make, that's the first thing. So that's pretty basic. And then the second thing is using that discipline or living on less than you make, that creates margin in your life, a little bit of wiggle room where I don't care if it's, as I said, the Mr. Morrow example, $100 a month, 200, whatever your beginning is, that's the money. That's the second ingredient of this three ingredients. And then the third one is the most powerful one. And the one that's most neglected is because I think when we're in our 20s, 30s, we feel behind because life is kicking us. I call it the messy middle on my show all the time because you're short on time, you're short on money. But this is actually, you might be struggling with the scarcity of money and resources in your life, but what you're not recognizing is that you actually are typically a billionaire in the most valuable resource on the world and on the planet, which is time. So don't waste another day. Actually try to figure out something you can do, some small decision that will create your great big beautiful tomorrow, because big things do happen from those small decisions.
Okay, I know a lot of entrepreneurs are listening and they're in the grind where they're like, I don't even know what's left every month. Every month is different.
Yep.
My business isn't stable. Some months I'm below zero. Some months I have a margin left. I don't even have a budget because I'm just listening to them in my head, these non-existent people, but that I'm thinking of. I don't have a budget because every single month is so different. And then the months that do well, I kind of keep that there for the months that do bad. How do I ever get ahead? Where does the discipline come in
It's
here?
funny, Ashley. If I'm being completely honest, I hate budgeting. I hate doing all those projections and spreadsheets too. But let me give you this doesn't even tie into finances, but it does hit the entrepreneur perfectly. I used to go to conferences with my first financial planning firm. I'd go to conferences and everybody would tell you, hey, you need to go write down who your ideal client is and actually do that exercise. Because if you don't know who you want to work with, how's anybody else going to know? And I would put that off. And then the next thing, the second part of this homework that you would hear at conferences on how to be a better business person is after you write down your ideal client, you ought to stratify your existing clients to see how many of them actually are reaching into the category of ideal client versus okay clients, and then you should never have taken this person.
Yeah.
So I've done this for 3 or 4 years and I'm struggling. My business is not doing great because I started my first company in 2002. And I was finally fed up with it. I was like, I go to all these conferences, they tell me the same thing. I'm just going to do it. So I did it. And here's the thing that I think we don't talk about with success is sometimes when you do the difficult stuff you don't want to do, it almost is like it opens up something that's subconscious or maybe even working while you're sleeping, is because I did the exercise. I stratified my client, realized that probably 70% of my business was not where I wanted to be. Fast forward 1 year later, and I can't tell you what I did different other than actually just doing the exercises so I could monitor, see the numbers, and have a dashboard view. And now it's flipped. It's like 70, 80% of my new clients are all ideal. My other clients, I'm starting to change my behavior. And I still tell you, I think it's because I actually did the exercise that it woke up that thing. And I think the same thing happens with your finances when you do a budget. You will become much more aware of where things are going. You're taking control of the situation. And then it might not be as painful if you're thinking when you actually see the fruits of the exercise. And if you do this long enough, if you automate enough of your financial life and of your business life, you can eventually quit doing the actual traditional budgeting where you're tracking every receipt, because so much of your money will actually be doing things on an autopilot, automation process. But you got to start and do the hard work first.
Yeah. It's interesting, the power of clarity, like how much it can move your life forward, even if you don't think you need to know it. There was a period where even just getting into money, like I had, and anyone listening to the show more than a year probably has heard me, pass by this topic, but in my early 20s, when Facebook ads were new, I had an e-course on how to get a job. It's still hiding somewhere in my ecosystem, even though I have my agency and I don't really coach anymore. But I had a course on how to get a job. It's pretty much a networking course. It's an awesome course. How to cold email, what do you do? And I scaled it. We did about $5 to $6 million in 2 months after I went into so much debt to, buying websites I didn't need and shopping cart technology that nobody needed. And I had no mentor, and it was just a whole thing. And then Facebook ads were new, and I was like a newbie on there, and I ended up scaling my company. And then at like 25, 26 years old, I really didn't know how to manage money. I had a dad who lost all of his money when I was 7. And I had this crazy fear that I was going to lose it all because I was
Yeah.
making so much. I was like, am I even allowed to have this? And I hired a bunch of lawyers, which is honestly my least favorite thing to do. And, one thing that nobody ever told me about lawyers, side note to all of you, is you would think when you hire a lawyer, they could sign off on something and say, you're good, you're in the clear. But it's all about the interpretation of the law. So you could, if you get an email from somebody that's like a cease and desist and you need to quote unquote become compliant, it is subjective what is compliant. So, it's like the world we live in. And we also live in a world where people, a lot of my friends deal with lawsuits because, and I see this all the time. It's like big business suing small business and small business caving, even if they're in the right, because they can't afford to fight big business, right? So I brought on all these lawyers thinking they would make me safe, thinking they would tell me what I'm doing wrong, or thinking they would catch something that would protect me as I grew my company bigger. But what really happened was they just like showed me all the possible risks, but nothing that was an actual infringement on anything. And I paused all my operations because of my fear growing up with a dad that lost everything. I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to be perfect, right? And another thing nobody told me in business is that it's very hard to play by the rules. I play by the rules because I value it, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like to play by the rules. I'm a rule follower. It's to a fault, honestly. But so anything these lawyers said, they were like, oh, well, this is a gray zone right here on your webinar. I'd be like, okay, pause everything. I was so scared. And it all came back to money. Am I allowed to have this? Eventually, the company completely folded after $5-6 million, having a huge team, pausing my operations, putting my ads back up. None of the ROI was still there. And I kept my team on board while I filmed new ads at 25, 26 years old for multiple months. I was like this monkey trying to get my ads to convert like they used to. It never worked. I held my team. I was over responsible for them. And fast forward years and years, here I am. I have my agency. I'm super proud of it. It's going really well. Obviously, it has its challenges. How do we help people listening start healing from that shaky feeling inside of them with money?
Yeah. First of all, you mentioned, and this is something I work with a lot of small business owners. I'm a small business owner myself. We have 3 companies, and I just want everybody, because I think sometimes hearing from somebody who's been there, done that is more cathartic than people could ever realize. And the first thing I want to tell all entrepreneurs is that I think that I always call it the entrepreneur's healthy fear that it's all going away. And that is something I don't struggle with it as much now. And I attribute a lot of that is that really when you make it through the financial order of operations and you start building enough base, some of that subsides, but it's taken decades. And I think it's actually a healthy thing. Fear is I think I've heard you talk about this. These things are here to protect you, these instincts. You just had to figure out how you turn it from the thing that was designed to keep you alive to actually, pay respect to it, but also you can plan yourself to where you build a comfortable bridge away from the risk or the fear of the situation. This is something that I tell everybody. I'm always amazed. Like we had an article that we're pitching out to network TV networks right now because we found out how many $200,000 and greater income Americans are struggling with just living paycheck to paycheck. And you realize very quickly that a lot of people just can't get out of their own way and build a system of protection so that they can actually own their time, live their best life, and quit making decisions just to pay the bills. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the part that if you want to know what you can do is, especially for my entrepreneurs, you're doing something that already inherently it's great, it's necessary, but it's also risky. We've got to build up assets and protections outside of that so you can you can take a different compartment of your brain and know that as you're building and you hit a lick with some success, that you're building something outside of that just in case it does go away. And that's the thing that I try to tell people is be purposeful when you start having some success. Because, you also mentioned something, Ashley. I have I grew up with, I always talk about be careful of your limiting beliefs. I grew up in a household where everybody in my house, my father, I love him to death. I mean, he's still, if you read this book, you will sense in my book, Millionaire Mission, it's kind of a love letter to my father because he, got taken when I was in my 20s.
Wow.
I think it's one of those things where he always told me that rich people get all the breaks, they don't pay taxes, they all these things out there here nor there. And I look back and those were limiting beliefs. And I don't know if it was because he was hurt by some of his lack of success and other things, but you have to be careful. Just like you said, your father losing it all at 7, make sure you can take that self-assessment, or you talk about self-audit, Ashley, and a lot of your stuff is that to know what is real and what's not real so you can get over that. And that's the part that I think that I want people to hear. And that's what I've tried to write in the book, to give you the system so that you could actually overcome some of that baggage that we all bring into, because you don't know where your hurt is. It's somewhere in your life, or you've been told something that's not right by people who might not have had the things work out perfectly, and they just poison the next generation. So you have to kind of do the work to figure out how you make your compass point in the direction that actually gets you to the better place.
I love that you talked about PEMDAS from Grant. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I haven't thought about that thing. So do you know what I think about often is the compass. Like I'm very bad at directions. People say, go north. And I'm like, never eat soggy waffles. Which way am I going? All the elementary school stuff. Okay, so you talk about these bullet points. You talk about keeping your financial life out of the ditch, love the free money. Joneses are broke and miserable. I want to go through these.
Yeah.
What do you mean by keep your financial life out of the ditch?
Yeah. I mean, first thing first, when you're starting your financial journey, I don't, the sexy sizzle part is when you start investing, because then your money starts working and it's kind of fun to see that. And I feel like people start immediately trying to figure out how they can start investing to grow their money. That's not where you should start. You first need to put some level of protection so that the big stuff doesn't happen and cause you to make a desperate decision. Like, if you have a medical situation, if you realize the majority of bankruptcies in America are actually caused by medical emergencies and other things, you'll quickly realize, yeah, health insurance is probably something you ought to pay a little respect to. If you get in a car accident and you owe more than the car is worth, and you need the car to get you to your job, you need to have, car insurance or homeowners insurance or renter's insurance. All I ask you to do in step number 1 of the financial order of operations is go write down the deductible for every one of your major insurance protections that you can actually protect yourself from these big things. And then make sure you just save up the highest. And once you have the highest, you can move on to other steps within the financial order operations. But the first one is just so you don't fall into the ditch before you even get started in your journey because something bad happens to you.
Okay. So I think a lot of people, here's my experience with insurance, like,
and I don't like insurance. I mean, it's
yeah,
not an insurance salesman, but it's just
right.
one of the things you have to know
No,
what it can and cannot do
I
for
think
you.
it's powerful. I think what happens, and this is something that I sit with, I guess I'm becoming this like Ebenezer Scrooge that I didn't even realize, but I'm thinking, because I was talking about lawsuits and big business, but I also think a lot about, there are so many terms and conditions we have to check a box for that nobody's going to read 87 pages, and no average everyday human speaks that legalese to even properly consent to this box that they're checking. And
For
I feel
sure.
like with insurance, it's like a crazy fault in our system that like
Yeah.
everyday operations requires these illegible boxes to be checked. But I think with insurance, I got once like some sort of ambulance chasing lawyer, tried to sue me for using a soundbite on YouTube in an e-course in like 2014 when I didn't understand law about copyright.
I've had to pay some of those settlements too.
Yeah, those are a real good time. But he ended up I paid out because I'm the first person to take responsibility, which my attorneys were like, Ashley, you need to let us respond. Because I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And then he like squeezed me even harder. But point being, my insurance didn't cover that, and I had copyright infringement insurance. But there's always loopholes.
Yeah.
What have you done as a business person to optimize your self-protection? Is there a way that you go about these things? Because you talk about like keeping your financial life out of it. How do you think about choosing your health insurance? How do you approach those things? 'Cause I think it's overwhelming. There's so many insurers and places to go, you know,
Well,
curious.
I don't want now. There's two things we have to cover here. Is I don't want people to get because you can overwhelm yourself with the
Right,
nuances of
right,
personal finance. So you in the beginning, and that's what step one is. This is just to protect you from the big stuff. Like the car accident, a health emergency, and things like that. And those type of things. I think you have to that's where we've created a ton of content to try to get you the basic core understanding of what like health insurance, what a health savings accounts, all those type of basic things because it does put you do need to have a base level of understanding. I'm not telling you to go read all 87 pages of the document, but you at least need to understand like different deductibles. You need to understand out of pocket prescription drugs, all those type of things, what all that the basic terms mean, so you can look at that declaration page, which is just the summary. It's instead of it being 89 pages, it might be 2 pages.
right.
You need to understand what's on the declaration page for all your insurance. Now, you asked a different question, Ashley, is that you find out about all these different insurance protections and then you like the loopholes. I will tell you, and this is something that's taken me a while and to reach a level of success before I recognize the power of it. And I should have been blinded by the obvious on this because it's exactly what I do for my clients. I
Mm.
have a great insurance guy who handles all of my errors and admission insurance, all my property on my commercial properties. He handles the workers' comp. It's good if you have somebody that this is their passion.
Right.
And I've brought in that person, and that's exactly, but that's not a step one. That's more of as you're maximizing, optimizing your things as you start having success, and you're trying to make sure you put a moat of protection around everything you do. Bring in the people. I mean, it's the same thing. I go back to publishing. I originally thought I was going to self-publish this book because I wanted to get it out there as fast as possible, and I thought and I had this big platform, and then at last minute I realized it was never going to be in a library. It was never going to be able to have the impact that Millionaire Next Door
Yeah.
if I went to self-publishing. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do normal publishing. So I sent a publicist I was friends with what I thought was a book pitch, and then
Mhm.
she says, "Hey, I like it. Do you want me to send this to my rep at one of the publishing companies?" Well, fast forward 2 weeks later, I get a FedEx with a contract with an offer with a check and all this other stuff. So I was like, well, I'm a smart businessman. I'll read this contract. And I quickly realized I was Googling all these terms within this publishing contract. And I was like, what the heck am I doing? So I
Mm.
hired a literary agent and they were able to protect me. What's funny is the same company offered me twice as much. I didn't even hire them.
Yeah.
But he was able to hire me. And yes, he gets a cut off of every book I sell, but
Right.
he is priceless. And I think that's what I would encourage you. If there's something you feel overwhelmed in, find somebody that can help you kind of build that knowledge source.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to just pay a lot of fees. Believe me, that's why I try to give away as much as I can on my
Right.
channel. It's because I'm trying to get you to a level of success that then you need to pay me the fees. But we got to get you to success first.
I love what you're saying because I think the basics are so important and people know that in theory, but we get caught up like I don't know if it's just me being in LA, but all my friends are biohackers. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I love the red light. I love the green juice, but how many hours did you sleep last night? like we're doing these little tiny optimizations
I
as a
mean, I'm
society,
wearing
but
all the Aura rings
it's
and all the stuff
great. I
now.
have
So
mine too. But we forget the basics. Okay, so another thing you talk about is loving free money.
yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because that sounds like a great time for a lot of us.
Yeah, I mean, this one, I'm amazed when we do a lot of 401ks, and I go do 401k presentations, and I have an employer that is so generous. If their employees put in 5%, the employer will put in an additional 10. So think about this. For this one company I'm talking about, you put in 5, you end up with 15. That is unheard of. I mean, it is just amazing. But yet there are financial gurus out there. We have a react on our channel on an episode just released today, where they're telling you until you pay off all your student loans, all the other debts in the world, you can't invest in your 401k. And I think that is horrible advice, because you're only going to be in your 20s or early 30s, and somebody offering you a guaranteed 50% to 100%, or even that example I'm giving, a 200% guaranteed rate of return. You've got to take that free money. I mean, the government, your employer is offering that because the government has given them a deal where if they're generous to their employees, they'll be able to save a little bit more and save some taxes for themselves. So take advantage of what the government has already pre-negotiated for you to get you this free money. And I'm always sad when I see in very generous plans like that employer I work with, when you find out 30% of the employees just don't do a 401k. And I get it. With this post-inflation period that we're living in, money is hard, things are expensive, but at some point you have to squeeze to get 5% or something out there, because that's going to make your situation better and mitigate the risk versus just putting your head in the sand and hoping it gets better down the road.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love in your book, you say the Joneses are broke and miserable, pay off high interest debt. We try to keep up with the Joneses. It's so wild. Like, I love those memes on Instagram that it's like, if you have a Chanel bag, but you're in debt, you're hustling backwards. Like, can we talk a little bit about debt, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the big one that I see catch most people is, and you're in LA. First, by the way, I live in Nashville. LA was the first place. I'm originally from Georgia. And the first time I went to LA, I couldn't believe. I mean, y'all had Range Rovers like we had Honda Accords in Georgia.
Yeah.
And then Nashville. Nashville, we're kind of like LA light in the fact that you see really fancy cars everywhere. But what blows my mind is when you see the stats that most people's car payment now is around 760, 770, and then they're financing this thing out really close to 6 years. I mean, it's like 66 months on new car loans. And then you find out that the majority of those car loans actually have a good bit of negative equity, meaning that this is not the first mistake. This is multiple mistakes where people are trading in cars that they owe more than it's worth, so it rolls into the next car loan. I would encourage people, don't drive around your wealth, because sadly, even if you can afford a $700, $1,000 car payment like people are bragging about on social media, do you realize that money, if you just look at the opportunity cost, if you let that money work for you, that is millions of dollars for the future. But people drive around in their wealth. And it's those little decisions. You don't think about it when you're 26 years old and you go finance that car that's going to make you look fabulous. You're
Yeah.
actually stealing from your future self. So it's consumption decisions like that. And I'm all about maximizing life. I don't want people to think I'm a miser. You mentioned Ebenezer Scrooge. I
Yeah.
always say we're financial mutants. We're not financial misers. There's a big difference. But we do have a lot of discipline problems in America, unfortunately.
It's really interesting to tune into what you're saying, because I know some people listening, and I'm so grateful. It's been a long time I've been at this show, and it's actually been one of the easiest commitments I've ever had. People talk about starting a podcast. I don't know how you feel about it. You've been at it OG for so long, Brian, but I'm just like, I don't think I've ever missed a week, but I don't even feel like I have an excuse. Like, you can batch record your episodes. You can have a 3-month period where you record 20 episodes. It's half a year almost. But I don't know, there's been this change in me that I wish I could just transmute over to everybody who's listening, where in my 20s, I cared so much about how I looked, how pretty I was, how skinny I was, what car I drove, how famous I was on Instagram or not. It was like these things kept me up at night. And I would get, and there's no judgment there, but I would have the hair extensions, I would have everything, and I would upkeep all this stuff. I had the Porsche, which obviously when my e-course went down into the doldrums, I had to let go of that Porsche real quick. But my point being, like, in my later 30s, it's like, oh God, you just don't even give a shit about all of it. Like, so much of my money used to go to shopping, and I still love a good bop around the mall with a friend. But it's like, for some reason, those same things just don't hit anymore. Like, yeah.
If I could wish, Jim Carrey, I use it in the book. He has this quote where he wishes everybody would get rich and famous so they could realize how empty it is.
Yes.
You realize. I had this goal that when I reached a certain income level, I was going to go buy the Rolex watch. I hit that level and I was not going to buy the watch, but my wife was like, you know what, you should do it. So I bought it, but you can see I don't wear because what's funny is that I fell into the trap that I was thinking these things would feel really good and it would make me project what I thought. But what I have found now that I'm actually in where I think I thought I wanted to be, but I could care less about those things. In some ways, I judge a little bit because I'm always curious, do they really have it, or is this what they think that they're supposed to do at this stage? I mean, I've been out to Vegas with friends and they're like, let's go to all the luxury shops and look at the watches and all that. And it just doesn't hit the same way, because I have found that once I'm in success, it's more about the life stuff. Do I own my time? Do I get to do things when I want to and because I want to, not because I have to? Do I feel purpose? Do I feel joy and happiness and fulfillment from doing it? That's real wealth. And I think if you want proof of this concept out in the world, ask yourself why everybody, when they get to $1 billion status, seems to get like they're homeless. I mean, you go look at, we've done examples on the show, whether it's Jay-Z or Zuckerberg or others. You could go look at them and see that the wealthier they get, the poorer they visually look in some ways with the clothes and other things. I think it's because they're doing things on their terms versus just what the world has told them this is what success looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I know what you talk about, rainy days, and I just hope there's somebody listening that's like, you know what? I'm hustling backwards. I'm in my 20s. I don't need all these clothes. I don't need all this. It's no judgment if it brings you joy. It's just, man, there's so many of my friends who played it right, and I'm seeing them now. And I just wish I could whisper to my younger self saying, hey girl, it's not going to do it. Just put it somewhere else. So rainy day funds, I feel like I've heard so many opinions on what is an appropriate rainy day fund. Again, there's the entrepreneurs where their money is like a swivel. It's just moving left, right, and center. We don't even know how does somebody start to think about the number that is their emergency reserve?
We go into some nuances of that, but the simple answer is 3 to 6 months for most people. I would tell you, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably going to need more than that, especially if you got multiple employees and payroll and all kind of other things that are due. You know how that works, Ashley.
Yeah.
It's your responsibilities grow. And then for retirees, it once again balloons up to 18, 36 months. But for most people, 3 to 6 months. And the biggest thing that step 4, the rainy day done right with your emergency reserves, is just so in case you got sidetracked with being laid off, or you couldn't, you got side railed from working for a few months, you could cover it and not panic and make a bad reaction. Now, I want to caution all my financial mutants or people who are good with money, because I made a big mistake when I was in my 30s, where cash wasn't paying hardly anything. And I was like, I don't need cash. I'll just use access to cash, which was my home equity line on my house, because I had a house with over 6 figures of equity in it. And I was like, I don't even need cash. But what I always tell people is that realize when bad stuff happens, it rains, it pours, meaning that the stock market will get crushed. So if you think that your investment account is going to be your emergency fund, there's a good chance it might be worth 30% less when that emergency happens. And at the same time that the stock market's getting beaten up is probably when your company might lay you off because they're going through an economic downturn. And it might be the same time that because everybody's in an economic downturn, your house, you can't sell it or you can't get a home equity line because the banks are also puckered up and scared. So when it rains, it pours. You need to have cash. There's a reason Warren Buffett always is the one that can make money even in the darkest of times, is because cash is actually a great wealth builder from a contrarian standpoint when you have it when no one else has it. So you got to protect yourself, even if you think it's unsexy and it's not going to generate much. So I always tell people there's a reason cash has 2 steps in my financial order of operations, steps 1 and step 4, is because it's that important to make sure you don't get derailed.
Yeah. Okay. This is such a good topic. And I feel like, people could spend 10 years building, 20 years building their emergency fund to really support. Like, how do you, talk to me.
And your entrepreneurs, because I'll tell you, I always say put on your 3D glasses. And what I mean by that is that every one of your entrepreneurs should have some type of, I don't want to call it a budget, but it is kind of like a cash flow, a business plan for the next 3 years. But I want you to do it in 3 different ways. I want you to do the dream. This is what you pray will happen. You're going to be rich. Oh my gosh, this is the dream. I want you to do down to earth, meaning this is, with the hiccups that will likely come, but don't skip the do-do plan. I mean, this is, I always tell people, do all 3 of the spreadsheets, because the do-do plan is going to be able to prepare you for when things get bad. And it's better if you address it while you don't have all the drama and the chaos that surrounds you. I would much rather you put on your 3D glasses, prepare for that do-do in the early part.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's true. I mean, everybody always daydreams. They put that in. I'm going to be, oh my gosh, is this really true? Because the law of numbers is it's fun to do projections and gross, because money can do really cool compounding stuff. But if you don't put in the bad plan, like what if nobody shows up? I mean, you got to plan for that.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay. And I know you talk in your book about tax-free Armageddon, like maxing out tax-free growth with Roth and HSA. I think some people listening don't even know what HSA stands for, which I have no judgment on, because I feel like this is a whole alphabet soup. I used to work for the government. Like I worked for NATO and NTMA, Systica, like the amount of alphabet. So can you just walk us through how somebody, maybe this is their first time ever really stepping up?
Here's really the point, without getting into acronyms, and I'll go a little deeper into it. The government has created only like a few opportunities to where they're going to say, this is such an important concept that we're going to let you do it completely tax-free. We're going to forego taxing you on this. If you will do this good behavior, we're going to give you this benefit. And it's such a good benefit that if you make too much money, they don't let you do it. And it's such a good benefit that they limit how much of this you can do each year. And if you don't do it, if you didn't do it for last year, it's not like they let you catch it up this year.
Right.
And that's Roth IRAs, your Roth 401ks, and then your health savings accounts, where they let you save for, your healthcare needs. If you did a high deductible insurance plan. So those things are so powerful that the government lets you take that money, take tax deductions for like the health savings account, and lets it grow tax-free for both the Roth IRA and the health savings account. That's what we're talking about when we talk about tax-free, is that I'm always amazed. And this is why it's the first real investment step with those Roth IRAs, is that if the government's only going to let you do $7,000 in it, and only $7,000 if you make less than a certain amount of money, get in there and do that if you can, because that's the money. If you start doing this in your 20s, daydream about how cool it would be if you did this every year. Remember, I told you my high school teacher told me $100 a month would make me a millionaire. He was spot on. Actually, he was a little, because I think it's under $100. It's like $87 or something that will make you a millionaire if you start when you're 16 or 17 years old. But I'm just telling you is that you start young enough, you could be a tax-free millionaire. And, all this tax policy, all this politics that we all hate, if you're in a Roth asset with 7 figures, you don't really have to worry about that stuff.
Got it. Beautiful. Okay. So it's Roth that you're referencing specifically, $100 a month when you're like 16 years old onwards.
Well, I mean, that's where you want. If you have earned income, like I will tell you, and I stand by this, is that one of the greatest superpowers I have is that I worked fast food in high school and food service. So I really discovered at an early age how crazy the general public is from working that job. So as
That'll
soon
do it.
as you get, as soon as you can, and if you're older and you have kids, get your kids working in high school so they can realize the value of hard work, but also how crazy the world is. I mean, that's why I love food service. So if you're waiting on people, or if you're serving flipping burgers or serving people at fast food, it will give you an education of life. So when you have earned income, you can do the Roth IRAs.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, my parents didn't really have me work. I mean, I worked at a preschool when I was 16, but they didn't really put too much pressure on me to work.
Well, kids
And
they're not always rational either. So you've got your own education there.
yeah, oh yeah. Actually, I will never forget a little girl at the front desk who was at the front desk because her mom was picking her up. She whispered in my ear, and what she whispered to me forever haunts me. She said, "Ashley, Miss Ashley," she said, "I have head lice." And that was when I got head lice. So I was 16 with freaking head lice from the preschool. So that was a great time. Okay, so you talk about maxing out retirement options. Um, yeah, like talk to me a little bit about what are those for
Yeah.
people who want to get started.
Step 6 of the financial order of operations is really just leaning more into the behavior of what I was talking about with the Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks, is the fact that I know when I tell 20 somethings that I want you to be saving and investing 25% for the future, you look at me like I have 6 eyeballs. And I get that because it's supposed to be aspirational while you're in your 20s. But if I tell you this stuff while you're in your 20s and you just start doing something, whether it's $100 a month, $200 a month, you're getting the ball rolling. By the time you're in your 30s, I really do want you to be somewhere between 20 to 25% towards the future. And that's really what step 6 is trying to push you towards, is max out your retirement savings so you can take that little bit of today for that great big beautiful tomorrow. Because unfortunately, I mean, I'm always saddened when you see that the lion's share of people who are 60 and older have less than $100,000. And then, if you back into the math, that means that forever, these people were probably investing less than $30 a month. If you did the math on what it takes to have $100,000, by the time you're 60, and you realize people just aren't doing it. They never took the action to actually start the process. So that's why I really put a big emphasis on that savings and investment rate, because you need to take a little bit just for today so you can have a much, better opportunity to enjoy your future.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. And you talk about building a more beautiful tomorrow and leveraging hyper accumulation. I feel like so many people listening are probably just like hyper accumulation. I'm
Yeah.
hypo accumulating right now. So how do we see that differently, or how do we understand what that really
This is
means?
one of my favorite chapters in the book because hyperaccumulation is one of those things where, in its purest forms, it just means what do you do after you get beyond saving the 20 to 25%. And what I talk about in the book is all the other steps are really to kind of build up your financial foundation. Steps 1 through 6 is, get the base level of, emergency reserves, and then let's get you to investing. But it's not until you get to step 7 that you say, well, okay, yeah, we took advantage of all the tax benefits, but how are we actually going to use this money? When do we think we're going to retire? What does our great, big, beautiful tomorrow actually look like in reality? And that's where you can really fine tune, how you've structured your accounts, how complicated your investments should be. Is there some things beyond the basics that you need to be shifting from? That's what that chapter really is trying to help everybody focus on, is because the steps 1 through 6 are really kind of more in the basic category of getting you a financial foundation. This is the first one that's letting you kind of take control and maximize, where you're going with your money.
Okay. And I know a lot of people, they think about goals, like these big goals of things that they want. And you talk about funding your abundance goals. Like, what does that really mean? Like, I'm imagining just like earmarking funds for things you want, or how does that look?
Well, this one, the most controversial thing I talk about is that actually it's step 8, the abundance goals and prepaid expenses. is where you start thinking about like the kids' college. That's where you're actually funding. You don't do that. A lot of people skip saving for themselves for retirement and instead focus on the kids in college. Because I know student loans they've gotten a lot of attention and it's scary, but you still stand by the fact that your kids can get a student loan. You can't get a retirement loan. Those don't exist. So I think step 8 is when you get into to funding the kids' college. It's also, I always tell people, because I love real estate. I mean, I have commercial real estate. I've done residential real estate in the past, but I get a bad rap because people think I hate real estate. And I'm like, it's just the opposite. It's just, I want you to do steps 1 through 7 and get your financial foundation, especially when you're dealing with leverage, because that's what debt is. It's step 8 is when you kind of want to lean into, if that's a goal that you have is to do real estate, let's just make sure you do it at the right time so that you don't get yourself, I always talk about getting caught naked, skinny dipping, because that's what debt is. It can really catch you cold if you leverage yourself too much too early.
For sure. Okay. And obviously the final thing is paying off low interest, or, paying off debt. Talk to me a little bit about that. I know debt way better than I wish that I did. So yeah.
Well, anybody who researches financial stuff, you'll see that there's a whole group of people that say you should never pay off debt, especially your low interest mortgage. And then there's other people that say, get out of debt as fast as you possibly can. I think that we're kind of more of that nuanced middle ground in the fact that while you're trying to make wealth, you're trying to get in the get wealthy stages. I don't want you focusing on trying to pay off that low interest debt, because the majority of Americans still have mortgages less than 4%. I know that new home buyers are struggling with much higher interest rates, but most people are still in 4% or less mortgages. It doesn't make sense when you're under 45 years of age, when you haven't reached your first 7 figures, to pay off something that is so low. However, once you've made wealth and now you're at the maintain wealth stage, and that's usually post 45 if you look at all the statistics on when people cross into millionaire status and beyond. And that's why I'm okay with you de-risking your life. If you want to, to pay off the mortgage, it's okay at that point, even if it's a low interest rate. Because the other thing I always think about, and I have this koozie that I stole from Bo's desk, for a 20 to 21-year-old, $1 has the potential to become $88. But for a 50-year-old, it only has the potential to become $3. That's how much the compounding growth opportunities, when you lose the amount of time it can be invested, goes away. So I think it's okay to pay off debt post 45, assuming you've done all the other financial steps that I cover. And that's why I'm pretty proud of the fact, if you look at that chapter, out for my visual learners, I lay out graphs on earning potential, happiness factor, and as well as just, rates of return or wealth multiplier of what you can count on your money, to kind of really make the case that there is a better way to kind of balance the make wealth, maintain wealth, and then just make sure you're not skipping any steps in between there.
Okay, friends, you've heard it here. Millionaire Mission, a 9-step system to level up your finances and build wealth. Brian Preston, thank you so much for being here. Where can everybody find you? I know books are everywhere books are sold. Anywhere else that people can learn from you?
Yeah, I would, if you just get in our orbit of just going to moneyguy.com, you'll find our stuff. I always like to give away free stuff. So if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, we have tons of free deliverable tools and other things that you can just make use of, because my whole business is built off of what we call the abundance cycle. You come, be as poor as you want, take as much free stuff, but if you do this long enough and hang out with me for a few years, you will become successful. And that's when the ask is that I love working with clients all across the country. And it's really an amazing thing. And then Millionaire Mission is just my love letter, not only to my father, my late father, but also just so people know that they can, pay a few bucks, but then have a system to actually help them jumpstart their wealth building. That's anybody, and this, Ashley, nobody writes a book to get wealthy off the book. So, I mean, that's what you do this because it really is a passion. You feel like you have an answer that you want to share with people. So I hope people don't take my word, go read the reviews and then see if this is something that could add value to your life.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the U-Turn podcast. I hope you learned so much in this episode and you're putting it into action today. We would love to hear from you. Slide into my DMs at Ashley Stahl or leave a written review if you're inspired. It would mean so much to us. Be sure to subscribe to the show because, as you know, the more subscribers we get, the better the guests we can bring you. And in the meantime, if you're looking to skyrocket your personal brand and impact millions,
head on over to wisewhisperagency.com to learn more about how we can help you craft your greatest talk of your life, how we can help you get booked on some of the biggest stages in the world, even the TED or TEDx stage. We'd love to hear from you, and that's it for this week.
Trying to solve, always think you know it all. Been thinking about you up against that wall. It's too late, I fell on every fall. Holding ground on hers. I'm holding ground on hers. Holding ground on late night drive. What you trying to do tonight? I swear you don't even try. Yeah, you still stupid. I can try and make you mine, but I don't think you like guys. I don't think you like guys. I don't think I should try. I guess it's time to give up, but I